There's something about driving at night that changes the world around you, the empty highways, the endless darkness, the strange feeling that someone might be watching from the shadows just beyond your headlights. Most people think of night drives as quiet, peaceful moments. But the truth is, some of the most terrifying real encounters happen on those lonely roads when there is no one around to help. Imagine cruising down a dark highway, music low, mind relaxed, until you notice a pair of headlights following you too closely. Or a figure standing on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere. Or worse, something darting across the road that doesn't move like any human should. And the scariest part? These are true stories experienced by real people who thought they were just going for a normal night drive. Tonight, we're re-diving deep into 3 disturbing real-life encounters that happened in the dead of night. Stories of mysterious pursuers, abandoned roads hiding something sinister, and moments where drivers swear they weren't alone even though the highway was empty for miles. As you listen, pay close attention to your surroundings, because these stories aren't just meant to scare. They reminders of how quickly a normal late-night drive can turn into a nightmare. Before we begin, I want you to imagine you're behind the wheel right now. Street lights fading, the road stretching into pitch-black nothingness, and your rear-view mirror showing only darkness. Because that is exactly where these stories begin, and trust me, you won. To look at night drives the same way again after this. The highway had been empty for nearly an hour, the kind of emptiness that makes you question whether you somehow drifted out of the world without realizing it. Midnight had already passed, and with each mile, the sky grew darker, the air colder, and the world quieter. Nate leaned forward in his seat as the road stretched endlessly ahead, the headlights carving through the night like 2 thin blades. He was driving home after visiting his brother 2 states over, determined to save money and avoid booking a motel. He thought some good music and coffee would keep him awake. He thought it would be an easy drive. But nothing feels easy when the night starts watching you. The first sign that something was wrong appeared around 1:17 a.m. Nate noticed the headlights behind him, far back, tiny, like distant stars. At first, he didn't think anything of it. Highways draw lonely travelers at strange hours. But what unsettled him was how the car maintained the exact same distance for miles, not gaining, not falling behind, just there, following, matching his speed perfectly. Nate felt the discomfort creep up like ice water running down his spine, but he tried to brush it off and talk to himself out loud. Probably just someone driving home, he muttered, attempting to fill the crushing silence around him. But every time he looked into the rearview mirror, those headlights stared back at him, cold and unwavering. At 1:30 a.m., the road curved sharply to the right. Nate slowed down, taking the turn carefully. And so did the car behind him, still the same distance, still shadowing him. His hands tightened around the steering wheel as the realization sank deeper. Whoever was behind him was deliberately following. It wasn't paranoia anymore, it was math and consistency. Nate's breath grew shallow. Okay. Maybe they're heading the same way, he whispered to himself, though he didn't believe it. The road ahead stretched into another endless tunnel of blackness, and adrenaline whispered that something about this wasn't normal. Then, at 1:44 a.m., the car behind him flicked its high beams on. White light flooded his mirrors. Nate flinched, squinting. The brightness was overwhelming, as if someone was trying to blind him. He instinctively reached for the mirror to angle it downward, but before his fingers touched it, the high beams turned off again. Nate's heart hammered. He stared into the mirror, expecting the lights to flash again. But they didn't. The car returned to its steady distance, dark and silent. Nate tried to steady his breathing, but the tension sat on his chest like a weight. Another 15 minutes passed before Nate realized something even more unnerving. The car behind him had no distinguishable shape. In the pitch black, he could see the headlights clearly, but everything else, its outline, the curve of its hood, the body of the vehicle was swallowed by the darkness itself. It was like the lights were floating, as though the car wasn't actually there at all, just the suggestion of one. Nate blinked hard, rubbed his eyes, but nothing changed. The lights remained with no source behind him, following him relentlessly through the night. By 2:10 a.m., Nate couldn't take it anymore. He needed to know. His chest throbbed with the kind of fear that grows in your stomach before climbing into your throat. He signaled, pulled into the next gas station, a lonely, flickering neon place in the middle of nowhere. The kind of place that looks abandoned even when it's open. The car behind him didn't turn, didn't slow down, didn't hesitate. It drove straight past, continuing down the dark highway until its headlights melted into the black distance. Nate let out a long, shaky breath and laughed nervously at himself. Seriously? That was it? That's what I was freaking out about? He said, though his own voice sounded hollow. Fear was a strange thing. It felt huge until it vanished, leaving embarrassment in its place. Nate stepped out, stretched his stiff legs, and walked inside to grab a fresh coffee. The attendant, an older man with tired eyes, didn't speak. He just scanned the drink, nodded, and stared vacantly past Nate into the glass doors. When Nate was heading back toward his car, the attendant finally said something. "You shouldn't be out on this road tonight." Nate paused. Why?" The man swallowed, eyes fixed on him. "People see things on nights like this. Sometimes they follow you. Sometimes they don't stop following." Nate forced a laugh. "You mean the car?" "Yeah, it weirded me out, but it kept going." The attendant's expression didn't change. "Son, you were the only car I've seen in 2 hours." A coldness ran through Nate that had nothing to do with the night air. "No, there was definitely someone behind me. Headlights, they were following me for like an hour." The man shook his head slowly. "No one came through. Not from either direction." Nate stood there in silence, feeling a tremor crawl down his spine. He wanted to argue, but the man's tone was too certain, too solid, too unnerving. Nate forced a polite smile, hurried to his car, and got back on the highway. He told himself the cashier was wrong. Maybe the guy just wasn't paying attention. Maybe he'd been half asleep. Maybe. But 10 minutes later, the headlights appeared again. Only this time, they were much closer. Nate stiffened. His heart crashed in his chest like a hammer. The lights were maybe 4 car lengths back, blindingly bright, piercing the darkness with impossible clarity. Nate gripped the steering wheel until his knuckles glowed pale. No, how," he whispered. He had been on the road alone. No turnoffs, no crossroads. Nothing but empty highway. The car should have been long gone. It shouldn't have returned. Not without passing him. Not without any sound. But here it was closer than ever. The lights flashed, on, off, on, off. This time, the flashing was rhythmic, deliberate, like a message. Nate's breath caught as the temperature inside his car seemed to drop. His breath fogged in front of him, even though the heater was on. He reached to turn the temperature dial, then froze. On. He saw something in the rearview mirror. Not the car. Not headlights. A face. Pressed against the inside of his back window. For one horrifying second, Nate could only stare. The face was pale, stretched unnaturally long, like someone had pulled the skin tight. Its eyes were huge and unblinking, reflecting his dashboard lights like animal eyes. Its mouth hung slightly open, revealing teeth that looked too small and too many. Nate jerked the steering wheel in panic, the car swerving violently before he corrected himself. He whipped his head around. Nothing was there. The back seat was empty. His heart thrashed wildly. "I'm losing my mind," he whispered, gripping the wheel. But when he looked back into the mirror, His blood turned to ice, because now the face was closer. Right behind the headrest, Nate didn't have time to scream. He slammed the brakes hard. The car fishtailed, skidding wildly before coming to a violent stop on the side of the highway. Nate scrambled out, stumbling into the cold air, gasping desperately. He spun around, expecting someone to burst from the back seat. But the car was empty. The highway was empty. The night was silent. Nate stood there shaking, staring into the windows, waiting for movement, waiting for anything. But the world was still. After 10 minutes of frozen terror, he finally forced himself back into the car, locked every door, and accelerated as fast as the engine could handle. He never looked in the mirror again, not once, not even when the lights returned behind him for the final few miles before dawn. Because by then, he already knew the truth. The thing following him didn't need a car anymore. As we descend into tonight's chilling tale, take a moment to prepare yourself. And if you're visiting this channel for the first time, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell icon. Your support helps us bring you deeper into the shadows and ensures you never miss a single terrifying story again. Now, take a deep breath, because the darkness is waiting. Story 2. You ever notice how some highways feel wrong the moment you enter them? Not dangerous because of traffic, not eerie because of fog, just wrong in a way your instincts recognize long before your brain does. That's what happened to Tyler one November night. And if you've ever driven alone past midnight, you'll know exactly why he still refuses to talk about what he saw on that highway. Tyler had been driving home from a friend's place. Nothing unusual, nothing spooky. Just a quiet 2-hour drive along a rural highway that didn't get much traffic. The night was clear. The moon was bright enough that it lit the road almost like a cheap street lamp. At first, everything felt totally normal. But if you're watching this video right now while traveling, maybe on a night drive yourself, listen closely. Because what happened to him could easily happen to anyone, at any moment. About 30 minutes into the drive, Tyler noticed something odd. His radio began cutting out, not with static, but with soft bursts of what sounded like whispering beneath the music. He tried switching stations, then turning the radio off entirely, but the faint whispering remained. Almost like someone was seated in the back seat, mumbling quietly just out of earshot. He kept glancing in the rear-view mirror, half expecting to see someone sitting there. It's okay to check yours too. I won't judge. Eventually the whispering faded away, and Tyler convinced himself it was just interference. But as the road stretched forward into a long, empty straightaway, he suddenly noticed something that made him grip the steering wheel with both hands. A man was standing directly in the middle of the highway. No car around. No flashlight. No reflective clothing. Just a tall, thin figure wearing a dark jacket, arms hanging loosely by his sides, head tilted slightly down as if he were staring at the ground beneath him. Tyler slammed on the brakes so hard the tires screeched. The car skidded to a stop just 20 feet away from the man. His heart hammered against his ribs as he replayed the last few seconds. The man hadn't stepped onto the highway. He was just there, like he'd been placed in front of the car. Tyler rolled down his window just a few inches. "Hey, are you okay?" The man didn't move. He didn't flinch, didn't react, didn't even lift his head. Tyler waited, debating whether he should get out. But something deep inside him, the same animal instinct that warns you when something is deeply wrong, told him do not approach. He honked the horn, still nothing. Just that eerie stillness, as if the man were carved out of stone. Finally, Tyler decided to inch the car forward, planning to go around him on the left side. But as soon as he moved, the man's head snapped upward with unnatural speed. Tyler froze. The man's face was wrong. Not monstrous, not bloodied, not inhuman. Just expressionless in a way that didn't seem possible, like every muscle had gone slack. His eyes were wide open, staring directly into Tyler's windshield. No blink, no emotion. Just that empty, hollow stare. Tyler slowly moved his car again. The man slowly lifted an arm and pointed into the woods beside the road. Not waved, not gestured, just pointed, like a warning. Or a threat. Tyler whispered to himself, "Nope, no way," and accelerated hard, speeding past the man. But the moment his car passed, he felt the temperature inside the cabin drop by several degrees, so cold that his breath fogged the windshield from the inside. His radio, which had been silent, suddenly blasted static loud enough to make him jump. He reached to turn it off, but before he could, a single, clear voice cut through the static. "Don't look back." Tyler's blood turned to ice. The road behind him was visible in the rear-view mirror. The woods the man had pointed into ran alongside him. Every instinct begged him, "Don't look, don't look." But the human brain is cursed with curiosity. He looked, and nearly drove off the road. The man, that same man, was suddenly standing on the shoulder behind him, watching the car speed away. Impossible. There was no way he could have moved that fast. No way he should have known Tyler would look back at that exact moment. Tyler floored the gas. The road blurred past as he pushed the car to 90 miles per hour, heart pounding, knuckles white on the steering wheel. But then, something else changed. The woods thinned. The moonlight brightened, and the highway up ahead curved gently to the right. But standing at the curve, in the exact center of the road, was the same man again? Tyler slammed on the brakes a second time harder than before. He veered right, skidding onto the shoulder, gravel flying everywhere as he narrowly avoided hitting the figure. This time, he didn't stop. He didn't slow down. But as he passed the man, he finally saw something that explained the instinctive fear he felt from the beginning. The man wasn't standing. He was floating. Just a few inches above the ground, coat unmoving despite the wind of the passing car, head turning slowly to follow Tyler's vehicle. At that point, Tyler did the only thing he could do. He fled. He drove faster than he ever had in his life, gripping the wheel so tightly his hands cramped. The highway blurred. The woods passed in a dark smear, and his heart hammered so violently that he thought he might pass out. But then finally, after what felt like an hour of fleeing something impossible, Tyler saw the glow of a gas station up ahead. A lone island of light in the middle of nowhere. He practically dove into the parking lot, screeching to a stop in front of the building. Only then did he notice how violently he was shaking. He ran inside. The cashier looked up, startled. "Whoa, buddy, you okay?" Tyler gasped. "There's someone on the road, back there." "I almost hit him twice." The cashier's expression changed instantly, from concern to understanding, then to dread. He walked to the front window, peered out toward the highway in the distance, and said quietly, "Tall guy? Dark jacket?" Tyler nodded. "Standing in the road?" Tyler nodded again. The cashier swallowed hard. "You're not the first driver to see him." Tyler felt the world tilt. "What do you mean?" The cashier lowered his voice. "There was a guy who died out here about 10 years ago. Car broke down. He tried flagging someone for help, but it didn't end well. People still see him. Sometimes he just stands there. Sometimes he points toward the woods. And sometimes he hesitated. Sometimes he tries to make drivers follow him." Tyler felt a chill crawl down his spine. "Follow him where?" The cashier shook his head. "No one who did was ever found. Highway patrol says they probably got stuck in the woods or fell down one of those ravines out there." Tyler knew that wasn't the whole truth, because something about the man in the road, his stillness, his impossible movements, the voice on the radio felt nothing like a lost spirit seeking help. It felt like something imitating a person, something standing in the middle of the road, waiting for the next driver to stop, waiting for the next person to follow. And if you ever find yourself driving alone at night, If you ever see someone standing perfectly still in the middle of a deserted highway, don't stop, don't look back, and whatever you do, don't follow where they point. Story 3. The night I realized how thin the line is between routine and terror wasn't during a storm, on an abandoned highway, or in some dramatic life or death situation. It happened on a simple, quiet, uneventful drive home, the kind you take 1,000 times without thinking. I had just finished a late shift at the restaurant I worked at, and the air was cold enough that my breath fogged the inside of the windshield. It was around 1:15 a.m., a time when the world feels half asleep, when streetlights flicker a bit lazier, and every sound seems a little sharper. I remember feeling unusually tired that night, the kind of exhaustion that makes you feel like you're operating on autopilot. I got in my car, turned on the heater, and started the familiar 20-minute drive home through the outskirts of town. For most of the route, traffic is non-existent. Just empty roads, quiet neighborhoods, and long, lonely stretches of 2-lane asphalt. But that night, from the moment I pulled out of the parking lot, I noticed a pair of headlights behind me. Bright ones, too, the kind that make you adjust your rear view mirror. At first, I didn't think anything of it. It was just another car leaving late, another person heading home after work, another night owl on the road. But after 5 minutes, I realized something was off. No matter how many turns I made, no matter how much distance I tried to put between us, a car behind me matched every move. Same speed, same lane changes, same subtle adjustments. That tight feeling, the one that starts in the stomach and slowly crawls upward, began to settle in. I told myself it was just coincidence. Maybe they lived in the same direction. Maybe they were zoning out and didn't realize how close they were driving. But the unease kept growing. I took a left turn earlier than usual, down a residential street I never used, just to test something. The headlights followed. I made another turn. The headlights followed again. Slower now, closer. My pulse started thumping harder, and suddenly I was wide awake. That primal kind of awake where your instincts sharpen and every sense feels tuned to danger. I considered stopping, maybe pulling into a gas station, but there weren't any open this late. Everything in this part of town closed early. And the last thing I wanted to do was step out of the car alone on a dark street with no witnesses. Instead, I sped up a little. Not enough to be obvious, but enough to put some space between us. Whoever was behind me matched the acceleration perfectly. Not tailgating, not falling back, just maintaining that same unnerving distance. I glanced in the rear view mirror again. The car was a dark SUV, the kind with windows so tinted you can't see inside. No stickers, no dents, no distinct markings. Just a featureless, predatory silhouette with 2 bright, unwavering eyes locked onto me. My heart started hammering in my chest. I grabbed my phone and considered calling someone. Family, a friend, anyone. But what would I even say? Someone's following me? What if I was overreacting? What if they really just lived in the same area? But the more I tried to rationalize it, the worse the dread became. I turned onto another street. They followed. I looped back toward the main road. They followed. At one point, I slowed down significantly, almost to a crawl, thinking maybe they'd pass me. They slowed down too, never going around, never breaking formation. It was deliberate. It was intentional. And it was terrifying. Then something happened that made my blood run cold. The SUV briefly turned off its headlights. Just for a second or two, long enough for my brain to register the sudden blackness in the mirror before they flicked back on. A signal, a message, something I couldn't interpret, but something deeply wrong. I muttered, "Nope, nope, nope," under my breath and made a decision. I wasn't going home. I wasn't leading this person to my house. Instead, I headed toward the only place I could think of that was still open. The regional hospital, about 10 minutes away. It was well lit, had security, and more importantly, lots of people. I took the fastest route I knew, pushing the speed limit, watching the car behind me do the exact same thing. Every turn I made, they mimicked. Every speed change, they adjusted. I felt trapped inside my own car, adrenaline surging, palms sweating against the steering wheel. When I reached the long road leading to the hospital, I noticed something strange. The SUV began to back off slightly. Not much, but enough that it no longer felt glued to me. The sudden change made the situation feel even creepier. Like the driver knew exactly what I was doing. Like they expected it. I reached the hospital parking lot, which was bright with floodlights, and pulled into a space near the main entrance. As soon as I stopped the car, I grabbed my phone and kept the engine running. The SUV pulled in behind me, not into a parking spot, not even near mine, but into the far corner of the lot, where the lights didn't reach as well. They sat there, motionless. No one got out. I watched them through my side mirror, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. I debated getting out and going inside, but the idea of stepping into the open, crossing that stretch of pavement with them watching, terrified me. I waited. They waited. I turned my car off. Their headlights turned off. The darkness swallowed them whole. Something about that moment hit me harder than anything else. The intentional timing, the synchronization. Whoever they were fully aware of what they were doing to me. Minutes dragged by, each one stretching like an hour. At one point, I saw a figure get out of the SUV tall, wearing a dark hoodie. They stood still beside the vehicle, facing in my direction, like a silhouette carved out of shadow. Not walking toward me, not walking away, just standing there, watching. I locked my doors, barely breathing. Then another figure stepped out on the passenger side, smaller, maybe shorter, also wearing a hood. The two of them stood silently, unmoving, as if waiting for something. My mind raced through every worst-case scenario I could imagine. Were they waiting for me to panic and run? Were they waiting for the lot to empty more? Or were they simply trying to scare me? Then, out of nowhere, a security guard stepped outside the hospital's sliding doors and began heading toward a patrol cart parked near the entrance. The moment he appeared, the two figures moved, quickly. They got back into the SUV, headlights off, engine silent. Then, in a slow, controlled motion, the vehicle reversed, turning toward the exit without ever turning its lights on. They rolled across the lot like a ghost, gliding through the dark until they disappeared completely into the night. I waited another 5 minutes before finally getting the courage to step out and hurry inside the hospital. I told the security guard what happened, but there wasn't much he could do without a license plate or a clear description. I stayed inside for about 30 minutes, letting the adrenaline drain out of me. When I finally went back outside, the lot was empty, completely empty. No sign of the SUV, no sign of anything. The drive home was the longest 10 minutes of my life, but nothing else happened. No cars followed me. No headlights appeared where they shouldn't. The night felt quiet again, too quiet, like the world was holding its breath. When I got home, I sat in my driveway for a long time, just staring out the window, trying to process what happened. I don't know who those people were. I don't know what they wanted. And I don't know why they followed me all the way from work. But I do know one thing. It wasn't random. It wasn't an accident. It was deliberate, targeted, predatory. And the worst part? Sometimes, late at night, when I'm driving alone and I see headlights in my mirror, I get that same crawling feeling in my stomach. The one that whispers that maybe, just maybe, they weren't done with me. Not yet. As you sit there now, maybe with the lights on, maybe glancing at your own windows, or thinking about the last time you drove alone at night, I want you to remember something. Every story you heard tonight wasn't fiction. These weren't campfire tales or made-up urban legends. These were real people on real roads in the same darkness you and I travel through every day. And the terrifying thing about night drives is how quickly everything can change. One wrong turn, one isolated highway, one stranger standing where no one should be, one pair of headlights that suddenly don't feel right behind you. And before you know it, the routine becomes a nightmare. If tonight's stories made you grip your seat a little tighter, or made you rethink that late-night drive you were planning, then consider this your reminder that the world is quieter at night, but not safer. Whether it's the person hiding in the shadows, the car following too closely, or something you can't quite explain staring at you from the darkness out there, on those empty roads, you are completely alone until you aren't. Thank you for riding through the darkness with me tonight. If these stories kept you on edge, hit that like button so more people can find this video and tell me in the comments which moment made your heart drop. Your engagement helps bring more real horror stories to the channel, and I read every single comment. Make sure you subscribe to Apex Stories Hub and turn on notifications, because next time, the story might be even darker, even stranger, even more unsettling. And who knows, maybe I'll be telling your night drive encounter someday. Drive safe, trust your instincts, and if something feels wrong on the road, don't convince yourself it's nothing, because the night hides many things, and some of them notice you long before you ever notice them. Stay safe out there, and good night.